Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope all of you all are doing super great. And in this video, I wanted to give you some information on working with user proxies. So we as business analysts, we work with user proxies in order to get requirements. Sometimes it's not all the time that we work with user proxies. Sometimes we work with user proxies, sometimes we work with real end users. So for those of you who don't know what user proxies are users who just represent the end users, but they are not the end users of your software or application. So when working with these user proxies, there's always sometimes a little bit of a mismatch of the real requirements, because when gathering requirements from the end users, that's the best way, because you get to know what are their tasks that they get to do daily, what are the pains that they are facing, what are the different frustrations, in which areas, on which steps of their daily tasks that they feel that it's really cumbersome, it's really manual, it's taking so much of time for them. So you get to know these areas well, and those are the areas in which you can find opportunities. But when you work with user proxies, sometimes you would get all the requirements, they would be the exact representation of the end users, but sometimes it may not. There can be chances that user proxies, they might have a little bit of a different requirement when compared to what the end users might need. Okay, so user proxies can be of different roles. Some examples of user proxies that you can work with are managers, a manager who represents employees or users of a particular organization who are kind of using your software. It can also be salespersons, marketing people. So these roles, they kind of represent the customers out there who are using your product. Okay, they can act as proxies sometimes. Another set of users who can act as proxies are subject matter experts. So these people have the real expertise over subject, and sometimes they act as user proxies. Another set of users can be internal product stakeholders, CEOs, and it can also be other, management people who can be user proxies. Depending on the scenario, depending on what product you're building, these can be a range of, user proxies. So if you get a chance to work with the end users and gather requirements, go for it, because they are the right people, they are exact people who are gonna use your product. So you would get the real crux of what they need, and you would get super insights. But if there's a situation because of certain rules, policies, certain other, X, Y, and Z conditions, that you would not be able to interact and work with the end users, and you have to work with user proxies, then there are some things that probably you can do in order to make the requirements that you gather more real, more in what to say, in a way that is really the requirements that are for the end users. Okay, you need to make sure that it's not kind of biased or anything like that. So for example, take this scenario: if at all you were working with a manager who represents the manager's company's employees who are using a software that you have developed. Okay, and they would be providing you with requirements of what they need or what they might feel is required. So there was an instance when there was like an application that was built. It was for a particular organization, and the users kind of used the application, and they found that when they did a search, the retrieval time was around 5 seconds. So they reported it back to the manager and said that it's taking like kind of 5 seconds. But the manager, in order to amplify that particular situation, which sometimes all managers do, so to amplify that, they reported back and said, you know what, this search retrieval is taking around 10 to 15 seconds. And the team was kind of zapped, because 10 to 15 was kind of a time which, you cannot make users wait for. So when they really went deep into that and they checked, they went through the logs, they got to know that the maximum search retrieval was around 5 seconds. So then they got to know that when this information was passed on to different higher levels, it kind of got amplified all the more, and it came up to 10 to 15 seconds. So don't just, what I'm trying to say is, don't just take that requirement. Try to get that requirement, analyze that requirement, go through it, try to get more information, try to validate with some data, with some metrics, and then take that requirement and then you check and see whether that's something that you need to start working on. Okay. Another situation where you would might get some requirements coming in is sometimes from the sales people, from the sales and marketing side, because they are kind of working with end users, with customers, and with clients. And if you ever go up to them and say, what, maybe what you feel, what's the most important feature that we need to incorporate, if at all you had a chance to ask them, if they came to you saying that, what, I think this product needs to have feature X, but this feature X, you just don't take that feature. You have a product vision. You need to check whether this feature is aligned with that product vision. Okay, because when salespeople they come to you with a requirement, most of the time it might be just because they lost one sales or they didn't get a sales because of these features which was not in your product. So you need to check and see whether if it's just one customer who feels that this feature was lacking in your product, or whether it was a collection, whether it was a group or a considerable amount of the customer segment that felt that this feature is required for your product. So in that way you can get a collection of user proxies, check whether this is something that is needed on a larger scale, and then you can take in that requirement. Similarly, if you work with subject matter experts, so let's say that there is this payroll application that you want to build. So when you take payroll, if you see the end users, it's going to be kind of the either HRs, or it's going to be the clerks that are going to use this payroll application. They are the end users because they are going to work on it. But sometimes you may not get a chance to work with them, but you would be asked to work with subject matter experts. And they would be like, having expertise over the financial domain and stuff, but you would not be getting the exact requirements as what you get it from an HR or a clerk. You might get, sorry if I said you might get, you will definitely get a lot of information from subject matter experts, including it's really great to have them when you need to take decisions on certain business rules and certain other side of the product. But in order to understand the process, the day-to-day tasks of users, where you want to where you can have opportunities to improvise, it's always nice to get it from the end users, which you may not get. So sometimes subject matter expertise, you would have to work with them. Another situation which I came across, or which I was in, is when a product was just in its MVP stage, okay, and the internal stakeholders kind of wanted to get investors investing into the product. And investors, there was just one or two investors who came and they felt that that was required and it was needed to be incorporated in the product. And we just blindly went about and developed that feature without even thinking whether it's just one investor who said that it's required, whether we just went with that investor's perspectives. And later on, we thought that maybe we should have validated it with multiple people and seen whether really that's something that is required for the product. So working with user proxies is, you just shouldn't get one person's perspective sometimes, especially if it's a product that needs to go out in the market. If it's just for one organization or for one company, then it's fine because they are representing their users. But if it's a product that needs to go out and target different customer segments, then you need to get a collection of user proxies in order to get multiple perspectives and validate your assumptions and whether the requirement needs to be taken and it needs to be prioritized. So some ways you can do it is, when you work with user proxies, is first check with user proxies if it's possible to work with end users or to get at least the inputs from the end users. So if that's possible, then it's well and good. You can get the inputs from the end users, understand their pains, their tasks and stuff like that, while the user proxy stays as a person who takes decisions. Okay, in that way the user proxy has the ability and the benefit of getting the requirements from the end users so that all requirements are covered, whereas they'd be in control of deciding which feature goes first and prioritizing things and stuff like that. If that's not possible, try to get a collection of user proxies from different perspectives in order to validate the requirements. For example, let's say you're just building a learning management system and it's not just for one organization. So it's not just okay to get a user proxy, a user from the school. It can be a teacher from the school. You need to even get perspectives of staffs from colleges, from universities, from teachers who are from the primary sector, from the nursery sector. When you get these multiple perspectives, only then you'll be able to understand requirements at a broader level, so that you kind of get the requirements and you have features that kind of satisfies multiple user needs without taking only one proxy or one or two users opinions and start building features. So this was something that I wanted to let you know. I hope that this was informative and you got some understanding of working with user proxies. So if you found this helpful, please do give this a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to this channel and also do share your feedbacks. Thank you, and until then, take care.